Oh, I'm sorry. Just getting ready for election night. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm saving my bottle and a half of Writer's Tear Scotch for that.
Welcome to Generation Movie on a Monday night. My name is JW Colwell. I'm joined as always by my co-host in crime, my partner in movies, Rich Drees. Rich Drees, how are you doing today?
Between bouts of existential dread and panic, I'm doing great.
Yeah, I just hope we're so low on the list that we don't get arrested if the demon wins, because we've said some bad things. So
it's Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, then you and me.
Well, I forgot Colbert. Colbert's definitely on the list. Everybody at Saturday Night Live. Some networks. Hopefully we'll be down in the pecking order. Nobody will be worried about it. I'm doing the No Shade November.
We're so not worried about it. We've actually planned next week's show.
Yeah, we have planned next week's show. I'm super excited. A little an existential crisis, but a movie that's not well known, but it should be, right? Movie next week is going to be the Sugarland Express, which is a fantastic movie. That oddly enough also has to deal with female empowerment. It has to deal with how tough it is to be a female in southern states.
From some young kid who directed some TV, did this, and was never heard of again.
Yes, from some young kid who directed a movie about a killer truck and a killer shark. But this one is a bit of his more serious work, and it's a fundamentally Spielberg movie because it's about a broken home, but it's also thematically it is one of his best kind of like character works, like because there's flashy stuff to be sure directorial wise, but it's about this woman and the child that has been taken from her and her efforts to get the kid back. Like it's a phenomenal movie. We should also talk. I do want to get this in early and then often, as everybody should be voting as well, early and often. We're welcoming Robert Bass to the network starting Thursday night. I want to wish him well. Thursday at 10, November 7th. World Class Clown with Robert Bass. He's been on Loud and Nerdy. He was on The End of the Night last week. Both tremendous appearances. We had a very good time with him. And last week's episode of Loud and Nerdy was so ridiculous in the stuff we were talking about. Just the Twilight Zone episode was about, the After Hours was about a mannequin. Robert had a mannequin on his podcast set that was wearing like a weird hat, and was just like so many fucking things were weird last week on Loud and Nerdy. But he's got his show starting. I wish him the best. I hope he does very well, and I hope he enjoys his time on the network. And then news. Let's start with sad news first, and then we'll go to even sadder news and talk about the box office. But sad news: Quincy Jones passed away.
Yeah.
And when
one of the big movers and shakers of the second half of the 20th century's pop culture, when you really think about it. He
has his hands in so many things that, it's like he has his hands in things like when you talk about Star Trek and you mention Lucille Ball, right? Lucy was part of the production that that pushed it through. Quincy Jones is very similar in that regard. He has his hands in so many things, and one of the reasons we decided to talk about him tonight, 91, but he is one of the few people that has won Grammy, Emmy, Tony, Oscar, and he also won 4 Golden Globes. You know what I mean? Like, so he's just one of those guys. Yeah.
Golden Gloves means he was a boxer.
Golden Gloves. I said Golden Gloves.
It sounded like you said gloves. I'm sorry. My bad.
I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it's me. I'm mumbling tonight. I'm nervous about tomorrow. But think about like his, film scores: The Pawnbroker, In the Heat of the Night, In Cold Blood, The Italian Job, The Wiz, The Color Purple.
They Call Me Mr. Tibbs, of course. Bob and Carol and Ted Alice, The Getaway, Anderson Tapes, which is a great little spy thriller if you've ever seen that.
A Tony Award for the musical revival of The Color Purple, and Emmy for Roots. Like
one of the most memorable theme songs for a TV show, for a sitcom from the 70s, the theme from Sanford and Son. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You all you need to hear is dun 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 dun. That raspy sax sound. Yeah, and you're off to the races with it in your head because it's just so beautifully catchy.
But like he touched so many, like his career touched so many people with his production unit, and Time Warner creating Quincy Jones Entertainment. Like think about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Mad TV. We're talking about that. The Jenny Jones Show, which is not something you think about him having anything to do with. He had many works with Miles Davis.
Even his like back in the late 50s, early 60s, when he was just doing like jazz stuff, he was arranging stuff for Sinatra. He was kind of like one of the American composers who was kind of pushing the whole Latin music movement at that time. Well, and his song Soul Bossa Nova was a big hit back in 1962. And then Mike Myers resurrected it for the Austin Powers movies. And it found a whole new generation of people to appreciate that song, that sound, and him as a composer of that style of music.
Well, and with you having your SNL thing, I know you know this as well, and this is kind of a fun factoid. He hosted an episode of SNL in 1990 during the 15th season of SNL, where it had 10 musical guests. So it had Tevin Campbell, Andre Crouch, Sandra Crouch, rappers Kool Moe Dee and Big Daddy Kane, Melly Mel, Quincy D, Sieta Garrett, Al Jarreau, and Take Six, and for performance of Dizzy Gillespie's Manteca by the SNL Band, conducted by him. So like he was involved in pop culture. He was involved in movies. He was, you know what I mean? Like did a podcast. One of the interesting records he produced at one point was an Ennio Morricone tribute album. We all love Ennio Morricone, which just
he produced like 3 albums for Michael Jackson, including The Wall and Thriller. And Thriller is such a giant hit that it became one of the biggest music videos of all time, which was it was a short film that they then edited down to like a 4-minute video. But, that whole, if it wasn't for him at the mixing board producing these albums, figuring out the exact right way for Michael Jackson to use his talent, and I'm only talking about his musical talent at this point, everything else about Michael Jackson, I will ignore for this moment because it's not about him. It's about Quincy. And Quincy Jones just made magic out of all of that. And you can't deny that those were big ass hits for the 80s. Those were some decade defining songs.
Like, and he was working in mainstream movies before it was cool to be working in mainstream movies, like In Cold Blood, In the Heat of the Night in the late 60s. Mm-hmm. He was like the movies he worked on, The Hell with Heroes, McKenna's Gold, The Italian Job, Bob and Carol, Ted and Alice. You know what I mean? Like they're so like all over the place and just like, you know what I mean? Like just all over the place where you like look at them and you go, one person did all of these things. He did a segment for Fantasia 2000, right? Mm-hmm. He was everywhere and he did a lot of, he's one of the first people, he's got an honorable doctorate from Berkeley. He's got all of these things, he's one of the Kennedy Center awardees. He got a National Medal of Arts from Barack Obama in 2011. He's just one of those guys that defined an entire generation that he cultivated, but he also was like protective of artists and took care of most artists. Had a couple major legal fights in his career, but for the most part, nose was pretty clean, Rich. You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
aside
Yeah,
from a
no
couple
real.
fights over credits, no real problems, no real issues.
Yeah, so
You know, one of the greats, but an underrated great. I think he's one of the greats where, you know, when he's gone, it's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, he
yeah,
did
you
do a
start
lot of.
looking at his obituaries. You start looking at the people who are coming out and, you know, commenting and saying, you know, he was an inspiration to me here, there, and the wide variety of people, the breadth of, you know, show business coming out, and
Yeah,
it's
he was in a lot of things. He was part of a lot of things. Worked worked with a lot of people, protected a lot of people, and like I said, for the most part, like sometimes when obituaries get written by, uh, you know, famous people or about famous people, there's one or
mm,
two things notes where it's like, oh, this didn't go well, or this was something where he really didn't have a moment where things didn't go well. He's gonna leave. Like I was reading, I think it was on Variety. The fortune he's leaving his kids is an insurmountable amount of money. Like it is just, it's just, you know, insane how much is, um, uh, you know, so it is one of those things. I don't know. It's just, it's a sad day, but also like, you know, 91 years is a pretty great life where he touched so many lives and did so many different things for so many people. You have to sit back and go, oh, you know, that's pretty amazing. And again,
I mean,
no shit. You know what I mean? No garbage. Um, yeah, it's kind of nice. It's nice. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's you know, his work and its influence will reverberate forever. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know what's
it's
not
one
going to
of those.
reverberate forever? The box office.
Oh, okay. I thought you were transitioning into the other thing I said I had wanted to mention,
No,
which
that would
that's
be a mean
terrible.
transition. That would be a mean
That would be.
transition. I wouldn't
I
do that.
know. I was kind of shocked. I'm like, what are you
I
doing here,
wouldn't
dude?
do that to you. We'll talk about your thing in a second.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
but I did want to talk about uh, everybody worried about the box office again. We're in this holding pattern from October, the end of October, Halloween season, right? Horror movies come out, well, you know, whatever, and then till about 2 weeks into November when people start getting off and start being able to think about the holidays. And then Thanksgiving is one of the biggest holiday weekend going weekends of the year. So everybody's producing these stories, Rich, and I'm at odds with myself because I read the stories, but I say to them, yeah, Wicked, Gladiator 2, and Moana 2 are going to have a big weekend. Can it save the box office, Rich? You know, I mean, Venom only dropped like this past weekend. Venom only dropped 49%, which is pretty high
Yeah, that's
for
actually a pretty good
that's a
number.
pretty good number.
Hmm.
And fucking Wild Robot went up 9% for some. Like the Wild Robot is just kids love it, you know. And we
It's
went to
good.
see
I
it.
finally caught up with it this week, and
It's a great little movie. It really is. It's
I was
really quite
very
quite
impressed.
quite engaged. And then Smile 2 kept on chugging along. You know, that movie's made 52 million. The movie that tanked this weekend is kind of a shocker, but not so much a shocker because again, Halloween fell on a Thursday. So nobody was going to the movies on Halloween.
Hmm.
Like no, unless it was a horror movie they made plans to go see and it was like special, it was like, you know, screening of Halloween or something. Nobody's going to the movies on Halloween because you got other stuff to do. And here opened the new Robert Zemeckis Tom Hanks movie, Robin Wright, that has like a very tricky preposition in that it's one spot in space over what 3,000
Years.
years for centuries, eons. And so you know, it was very clear on the thing from the writer, director, and you know, stars of Forrest Gump. Joy, hope, loss, love, life happens here. And I was looking at it and I was like, first off, I'm kind of like, I've been taken aback a little bit recently with the sheer volume of how great Forrest Gump is. And I get it. I know why people love it, but I don't even think it's one of the best movies. It's not even the best movie the year it was nominated. Like, right? So but this movie completely tanked. I don't know who it's made for. I don't know what you're thinking with it.
I don't know. I mean, it's based on a graphic novel, which I have on order. I haven't read. That uses the same conceit, but it also overlaps panels in with different time periods in each. So I don't know how that gets adapted into what Zemeckis is doing. I'm just every now and then I kind of go back to thinking about how Zemeckis is kind of an experimental filmmaker in terms of how he does story.
He really is. Like, and like some of his stuff connects, and other things drastically don't connect.
Yeah, like
you know what I mean?
He was one of the first people to do full on motion capture animation with Beowulf and
Polar Express.
Polar Express. I couldn't think of that name. Thank you.
I don't know why that movie terrifies me every Christmas.
I think it's because they don't have the eyes right. The eyes kind of look a little dead.
They're terrifying. They're absolutely terrifying.
Did I ever tell you about the time I saw Beowulf with Peter Jackson?
No, you didn't. That's a huge name drop. Did you really see Beowulf with Peter Jackson?
I was in the same theater as Peter Jackson was when back when he was in outside of Philadelphia shooting The Lovely Bones. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was at the IMAX in King of Prussia, and I wanted to see Beowulf. So got my ticket, sit down, waiting for the movie to start, having a chat with, this random stranger who's sitting next to me actually. And he kind of looks up and just as the lights are starting to come down, and like 4 or 5 people come in and take like the row to, sit basically in front of us 2 rows down. And he's like, holy crap, I think that's Peter Jackson. And I go, oh my God, you're right. And so I'm trying to watch Beowulf. I'm watching Beowulf.
Yeah, Beowulf all of a sudden takes a backseat. It's like, sir, can you tell me something?
Because I'm like, okay, do I go up to him? Do I ask him a question? Damn it, I left my phone in the car with my camera, so I'll never get a picture of this because I can't run out and then run back in. But
because then you look like a creepy weirdo. I saw that's an amazing story. I saw Beowulf. I went to a NATO meeting, and they ran Beowulf for the theater owners because they were like, "This is the future." Right, 3D, and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, the Paramount executive that we saw the movie with, it was me, Dave, and a bunch of other people from northeastern Pennsylvania, NATO. And he was like, "You need to retrofit your theater. You need this movie is going to make, $200 million." And I was watching the movie. I'm watching the movie, and I'm like. Dave looked at me and he's like, retrofit our theater. I'm like, what? And he's like, am I missing something? I'm like, no, it wasn't that good. Like, I mean, it's a cool story and it looks neat, but I don't.
Yeah.
But who's it for? Who are we making a giant? Like, that's the Zemeckis question, right? When you're watching, like even his old work, like used cars, who is it for? I mean, I love it. Right?
I think that's more of a general audience. And in the 70s when that came out, you still had very much, kind of a bit of a counterculture. Everybody was looking at slobs against the snobs comedy like Animal House, which that, used cars definitely plugs into.
I just think a lot of Zemeckis' work is, who is this for? Who are we making this for? You know what I mean? Like, and in this case, like 4.8 million opening weekend, it's only going to get worse. Like, it's on 2,600 screens and only did 1,800 a theater for the weekend.
It's funny because I look and I'm like, is this the first time in the top 10 we've had 2 Indian films at the same time?
Yeah, I was looking at the
Both
3
under
and
1,000
Sing 'Em Again.
screens. Yeah. Yeah, I saw Sing 'Em Again. I think I mentioned it last week that it was one of Rohit Shetty's cop verse films.
The
So,
cop movies you're talking.
you sing them, and then his 2 buddies come in for the third act to help kick some ass and blow stuff up. And
that's an interesting observation, right? The 2 Indian movies in the top 10. Also,
both action films.
Also, the 2 movies opening in September just dragging. Like Beetlejuice grossed another 2 million this week. It's on home viewing already. It only went down 33%. It needs 8 more million to get to 300 million. Right? The Wild Robot did 7.4. It went up 9%.
Yeah, and that's also available on
That's also available on stream. But like Variety wrote a giant article that was like, what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen? Oh my god. And I'm like, they got 3 fucking movies that are coming out in November that are gonna gross bank. They're gonna be big movies. Like they've got all quadrants covered. They've got kids. They got a kids movie from Disney that people apparently want to see. They've got Wicked for musical fans and also Wizard of Oz fans, which is pretty broad. And they have Gladiator 2 for guys who might want to go watch, I don't know, whatever's going on in that one scene with sharks and shit. Just you know what I mean? So and the question on the article, Rich, and again, it's getting annoying. Hollywood bets on Thanksgiving rebound. Will Wicked, Gladiator, and Moana revive the sluggish fall box office? Yes, they will.
I mean, Wicked is tracking for 85 million. Its opening weekend,
right? And Gladiator's doing 50 with a 3-hour runtime, and and Moana's like anywhere from 70 to 80. So it's like,
I think Gladiator's a 2.5-hour runtime, which is still a big chunk of time. I'll be able to tell you about that after Thursday.
So they're calling it Glick because they're trying to come up with Barbenheimer. They're calling it Glick. But also, Moana comes out on November 27th. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, but it's been so disappointing with Joker and Venom, but like there are movies coming out. We are getting a Lion King prequel that I don't think we need. But Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I got to tell you, just so we're clear, I know people don't think it's going to be big, but it is the first time in my nephew's life that we've planned to have a bunch of people go to the opening night of a movie they want to see, right? So it may not be for us, right? Everyone's like, I told you, I've had a couple of things this year where it's like, it's not me. I don't, it's not for me. But Sonic 3 might be much bigger than you think, and we have like other weird things coming out, like the Nosferatu movie. And I just think I think this worrying about the box office when we had no product at the beginning of the year and the year kind of bounced back pretty well. You know what I mean? Like we get stupid stories about horror movies, we get stupid stories about comic book movies, and now we get stupid stories about like, why is the box office so sluggish? Well, because Joker didn't hit. We didn't get $1 billion movie for free, is what happened, right? So I'm over the sky is falling. Wicked is looking anywhere from 80 to 85. Gladiator's looking 55 to 65, and Moana is targeting 100 million in 5 days. I think we're going to be okay.
Yeah, looking at this coming Friday, there's nothing really exciting that I'm hearing a lot of buzz about. Best Christmas pageant ever, Heretic, Weekend into Pay. Meh.
Heretic's getting great reviews, but again, it's one of those movies like, I think Heretic's like 2 weeks too late. There are horror movies coming in November and December that moved out of the way of Joker, and as it turns out, Rich, they didn't need to.
Yeah,
they didn't need to. That's the rub.
And then on the 15th, we've got Red One, which looks I'm sorry. I know somebody who's seen it already, and he was very excited about it. But and he's like, trust me, there's stuff in there that they keep hidden from the trailer, and it's much better than the trailer. But just going by the trailer right now.
So wait a second. Somebody saw. Wait, I thought you were going to say they saw it and they were excited to see it, and then they weren't excited to see it.
No, they saw it and they are excited to see it. And they were saying, hey, don't go by the trailer, but all I have to go by is the trailer and my friend's word. So, I want to trust my friend.
Who do you trust? Who do you trust? Friend, that's a friendship. That could be a friendship ender. And I don't really.
No, it would never be a friendship ender. It would never be a friendship ender. But
I don't know.
Boy,
there's some. What is a movie? What is somebody who loves a movie? I'm sorry. Let me rephrase it. Let me get it right. Is there a movie that someone could like that would be a friendship ender? I'm thinking really hard. I know I have one. I have one for me.
Natasha is my best friend in the world. I hate Baz Luhrmann films. She loves Baz Luhrmann films. Okay, so if we can make that friendship work, I don't think I could end a friendship with anybody.
Okay, I wouldn't. I don't want to. That's right. I don't want to be rude. I don't want to end a friendship, but seriously judge it. Seriously judge it. And the one for me, Rich, is pretty easy. If you come to me and you say I love horror films, and you go, I especially love Rob Zombie horror films.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I think there are interesting things happening in his Halloween films. Beyond that, I'm not a fan, but I think he has some interesting ideas in Halloween.
Halloween 2 is even more like Halloween 2 is like that's the horse movie. That's the movie horror fans refer to as the horse movie. Also, I will. There are things like the Halloween is a good thing, but like the reason I hate Rob Zombie's Halloween is not how badly he botched Michael, which he did. Like it's a bad botch, right? The idea that he's a regular serial killer and he's not, not like some, vessel of evil is bad. The person I hate that he destroys is Dr. Loomis. I can't stand that the Great White Hunter that was Donald Pleasance in every Halloween movie until he died in the 90s. Right? Every Halloween movie he's in, he's the great hunter, right? And they turn him into a schlock psychologist who chooses to let his most famous patient out wearing a crazy mask on the 17th anniversary of his murder spree. What the fuck? Anyway, good evening, Joe. I'm doing No Shave November. It's not going to last long. I'm telling you right now. I'm itchy. I don't like it. I hate it. But I'm doing it for you, Joe. I'm doing it for you. Also, we're also doing this for you. If you're looking at the bottom of the screen, if you like our show, if you like our network, please subscribe to the Indie Escape Network YouTube channel or the Facebook page where you can get all of our shows, or any of the places that we have at Instagram, Threads, X, Twitter, whatever the fuck the maniac is calling it this week. We're on IMDb as well. Your story, go ahead. Let's talk about your last news story, and then we'll get going.
Oh yeah, again, it's a bit of a downer, and I apologize. But if you are familiar with the works of Roger Corman, director and producer, you probably have seen his original version of Little Shop of Horrors from 1960. The star of the film, Jonathan Hayes, the original Seymour Krebs, passed away a couple of days ago, but they just announced it within the last couple of hours.
He was 95.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, these deaths are pretty.
Yeah,
they've lasted a long time.
Very famously, they shot this movie in just a couple of days, really cheap, really quickly, and it became a bit of a cult classic, turned into a musical, which became a great movie musical itself. The original is, of course, noted for the the scene with one of Jack Nicholson's earliest roles, where he is one of the patients of the dentist, the sadistic dentist, but he's a masochist who enjoys getting all that work done to him, enjoys that pain. It's crazy that they got this through the censors of the 1950s, but it's there, and it's a wonderful scene.
He also worked on 20 other Roger Corman films.
Oh yeah,
he was also great ones. Terror. He was also in the Terror with that directed by Roger Corman, and also starring Jack Nicholson. He was
St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Yeah, he was in a lot of great like. He made his cinematic debut in 1954, the horror comedy Monster from the Ocean Floor.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Little Shop is what's giving him his immortality, though. So
yeah, Krellborn, first person to play Krellborn, Jonathan Hayes. Yeah,
a nice guy. Met him at a Blobfest several years back.
Oh, you meet everybody.
I don't meet everybody. I still haven't met Tom Hanks. That's like on my short list of people I would like to have a chat with. Mostly because I'd be like, so what was working on Bosom Buddies like?
You would be, just so we're clear, you'd be the character Chris Farley from. So
when you wore that dress,
you remember that one time you wore that dress and you pretended to live in a woman's hotel? What was
you made one minor change.
What were the boobs like? The beard is going to look amazing with all the weight you lost, JW. You look like the evil genius you are. It looks terrible. I need my baby face. It's gonna be bad. You know what I don't need a baby face about, or we don't need to sugarcoat in any way. This movie, All the President's Men, 1976, one of the most competitive years in Oscar history, right? We're going to talk about that later. There's a real interesting legacy development with this movie. But All the President's Men, of course, is about Woodward and Bernstein, who are put together to work on the small little thing about, breaking into the Watergate Hotel. And it started in the gleam of Robert Redford's eyes, like the production. Like, it's a real interesting production story, right? He was making The Candidate, which is a fantastic political movie, a really cool, about an empty vessel that looks really good and it has no morals or any kind of a dogma to ascribe to. I can't imagine how this would have anything to do with the current election cycle we're in. But basically, a person that is in a suit, everybody thinks he's special, but in reality, he's just a vapid, empty suit kind of person. And that's The Candidate. So he was making that movie, and he read, all the stories from Woodward and Bernstein because he was working in D.C. on, the movie. So he read all the Washington Post stories, and he was getting ready to film The Way We Were, which is like crazy. And then, he basically bought the story, Woodward and Bernstein's book, in 1974 for $450,000. That is an obscene amount of money in 1974. Also, it's an obscene amount of money that an actor has just lying around to buy his next vehicle. Just so we're clear, this Redford is one of those guys, right? One of the Hollywood guys that buys his own stuff, directs his own stuff, produces his own stuff. You know what I mean? Like you're seeing it now, kind of with Cruise. Tom Cruise is in the same vein now, where he goes out and acquires things for himself. You know what I mean? Although, Redford has, of course, been a great director as well. But so basically, he bought it for $450,000. They tried to do a budget of about $5 million. He called on Ben Bradlee, who basically didn't want the movie made, but basically, realized that Redford was serious. So he basically wanted to push the best foot forward for journalism. So he helped them, right? He helped them with anything he could. he gives it to William Goldman, who, by the way, Rich, people teach classes about with regards to script writing.
Yeah,
and then like this one has an interesting story. I don't know if you've heard this one, but you probably have because you're super smart, just like me about movies. But so Goldman gives a draft of the script. Redford's not happy about it. Woodward and Bernstein aren't happy with the script. Redford asks them for suggestions. Bernstein takes the draft that Goldman has made and goes over to his girlfriend's house, who happened to be writer Nora Ephron, which, again, all these people being together is just crazy. And then they wrote their own draft of the script. Now, Redford made the mistake of showing the draft to Goldman, suggesting not that to replace his script, but that he could integrate some of the material into his script, which Goldman took as a personal affront and I quote, a gutless betrayal. Redford later expressed dissatisfaction with the Bernstein Ephron draft. And
I could see Goldman's point of view.
I can totally see Goldman's point of view, and also
the writer, and your boss just went behind your back and had somebody else. Now,
gave it to two other writers.
I don't think Redford said, "Hey, Bernstein and your chickie here,
Nora Ephron,
Nora
one of the
Ephron
greatest
really
writers
wasn't
ever."
on quantity at that point.
I don't think he did. I just think
they kind of did it, and he said, "Oh, okay, cool." I think that kind of speaks maybe to Redford's greenness as a producer, his inexperience as a producer. He
I
probably
also think it's collaborative. I don't think I think he's a collaborative guy, right? So if somebody comes to him and says, "Hey, this is a version, like maybe we could do this," and William Goldman, who happens to be one of the greatest screenwriters ever, and when I say that, I don't say that lightly, Rich, right? William Goldman,
no.
Script wise, ready? Let's run down the list quickly. Masquerade, Harper, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Hot Rock, Stepford Wives, The Great Waldo Pepper, Marathon Man, A Bridge Too Far, Magic, Heat, The Princess Bride, Misery. This one's not great. Memoirs of Invisible Man, not great. Year of the Comet. Year of the Comet, Chaplin, Maverick, The Richard Donner Maverick, The Chamber, The Ghost in the Darkness, Absolute Power, General's Daughter, Hearts in the Atlantis, Dreamcatcher, Wildcard. So not a person to take lightly.
Certainly not.
Screenplay wise. Including the first 5 that we mentioned that were all mega hits of the 70s. Like it wasn't, but basically, Goldman got the last laugh because he made fun of Bernstein and Ephron for making Bernstein look, sexually attractive in the script.
Yeah.
And then basically what happens is, then they hired Alan J. Pakula, who's again one of our more underrated directors, right? He comes in, he takes a look at the script, and then he gets rewrites and works on different things. And then,
he had done so far up to that point. I mean, he'd done his previous film before this was The Parallax View, which is also a political thriller. So it kind of makes sense in a way that the movie turns out the way it does because of that. He also did
Clute. Right. He also did Clute, one of the defining movies of the sexual liberation generation in movies. And he comes in and they work on it, and at some point they talk about that Pakula and Redford had written pieces of the script or parts of the script, but it is later adjudicated that their contribution wasn't significant. That Goldman basically was properly credited, and that the final draft was all William Goldman, right? So the script they used. One of the big key things he does in condensing the book to the movie, it's really interesting, is that he shortens it by half. So the movie, the movie kind of covers everything from, A to B, and then the CD, which is all Nixon's fall and everything that happened afterwards, is really distinctly done at the end with the teletype kind of on the screen.
Yeah.
At the dates they happened and things that happened. So it's like the full book is all about the entire scandal. And this is more about them cracking everything and kind of getting it out, and then the scandal happens, right? And then, Nixon leaves office. But it's kind of it's a real interesting adaptation in that it's not the full piece of material. It's not a book from beginning to end, which I think is kind of speaks to his genius. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like the last part where, I was watching with my wife earlier, and she was paying attention, but she wasn't paying attention. She had her phone. But she was like, so, she's watching. She's like, this is, kind of interesting. I was holding her attention for a couple minutes, because she was in and out. And she, we're playing with the kids and doing all kinds of stuff. And she, when it got to the end, she's like, okay, so it doesn't tell you anything about what happened with the scandal. I'm like, well, we know what happened with the scandal. It makes the clear, definitive choice to make it super cool and newspapery, right? It makes it, like it does the, which you can hear in your head when after you've watched it, right? You can just hear it.
Yeah, the teletype just banging away.
The teletype machine going. Casting, Redford picked Al Pacino first, and then it later fell to Dustin Hoffman, who is. I was looking at this performance today. Redford is clearly cooler in this movie. Hoffman is kind of like a rabid dog. It's really interesting the dichotomy of the two performances. They're like Hoffman doesn't know how to talk to people or treat people, right? Mm-hmm. There's this weird like energy, but it's cool synergy because it's Robert Redford, and everything Robert Redford touches turns to charisma. So it's this weird like it's like I think if they had put Pacino in, right? I was looking at the casting. If they put Pacino in, it would have been harder for Redford to be he's like the focal point of the movie. You know what I mean?
It's ostensibly a two-hander double act here, but Redford comes off a little bit more than we get for Hoffman.
Hoffman does all the creepy shit. Like he does all the weird, like when he's talking to women and like women are like, and Redford's like, no, we won't do any of that. You don't have, I don't want to put you, I don't want to do that to you. And he drags Hoffman out of the scene or whatever. I'm like, Bradlee.
Although it should be noted that both Woodward and Bernstein have said we never looked that good. We were never that smooth. This is Hollywood at its Hollywoodest because we were never off.
The person complaining the most about the casting was Ben Bradlee. Oddly enough, right? Because Bradlee wanted George C. Scott, and then and when Robards came to check out the Washington Post and hang out with Ben Bradlee for the day, they did not get along. They were like he was, Robards came out of it saying, "I feel like I wasn't impressed with Robards when he visited for the newsroom." And then, but once he realized Robards was doing it, he said, "Just don't make me look like an asshole," is the last thing he said to him before they made the movie. Pakula didn't think that Robards was good for Bradlee's elegance and the way he carried, like the way he commanded authority. Other people that were up for the role: Carl Malden, Hal Holbrook, who would ultimately play Deep Throat in the movie, John Forsythe, Leslie Nielsen, Henry Fonda, Richard Widmark, Christopher Plummer, Anthony Quinn, Gene Hackman, Burt Lancaster, Robert Stack, Robert Mitchum, and Telly Savalas were all up for the role. So that should also give you some, like, just how broad the role is, but then it is such a good performance by Robards. He commands every scene he's in. He owns every bit of property that he's in. You know what I mean? In the movie, he's not in it a lot, but when he shows up, you better have answers. You
Yep.
know. And then another interesting thing that comes out of this is also Redford and Hoffman divide the billing, which is a rare thing in 70s Hollywood. Redford is a build above Hoffman in the poster and the trailers. Hoffman is billed above Redford in the film itself. And that copies, do you know what famous movie that copies, Rich?
I'm gonna, just because of some of the people involved, I'm gonna say Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
No, but you're close.
Okay.
It is a Western. It is a Western. It copied, it was an idea Redford got from John Wayne, who said if you're in a movie with another star, it's okay to share billing. And the person that he shared billing with the most in his career was Jimmy Stewart. And the movie they were talking about when he was talking to Redford about it was The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is one of my favorite all-time westerns. It really can't be replicated. Filming, they did it at the Post's office for months, but the Post wouldn't allow them to shoot there. So the Post denied permission for them to shoot in the newsroom. So they just brought set designers and they copied everything. And they collected boxes of trash from the trash room. They created it on 2 sound stages in Burbank Studios, the cost being $200,000 to replicate the sets. And I got to tell you, it looks like a fully functional newsroom.
It does. It was also an inspiration to Richard Donner when they were doing Superman and Superman 2 back to back. When designing the Daily Planet, he basically said, I want it to look like All the President's Men. We need to actually believe, again, going back to his whole idea of verisimilitude for the Superman films he was doing, we need to believe that the Daily Planet is an actual newspaper.
It's a fully functional newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the brilliance of this. It looks real, the way things move. The last thing about production is there was an MPAA rating fight. The Motion Picture Association of America initially gave the film an R rating for having multiple uses of the word fuck and its derivatives. Warner Brothers and Redford disagreed with the R rating, and because, again, it's Robert Redford, he succeeded in getting them to rescind the R rating, and it's a PG film.
Yeah.
Is it just because he batted the baby blues, Rich? We've heard filmmakers.
I mean, we've talked about what a pile of crap
the MPAA
is, and and the rating system is. And yes, Warner Brothers, big studio, one of the major funders of the Motion Picture Association of America. So
I don't know. I imagined Robert Redford just walking in and looking at the 10 people who decide ratings and going, "Come on, guys, I'm Robert Redford." And then they're like, "Okay, it's a PG. You're right. You are Robert Redford." So like I said, the most interesting story out of this production is the Nora Ephron Bernstein Goldman War, which I was looking at going, that's really interesting because you're talking about three of the best writers ever, right? Like Ephron's a great writer, Bernstein's a pretty great writer, and so is William Goldman. Just getting into a fight over shit is just crazy to me. Like that's nuts. Yeah. Box office. This movie was a hit from the get-go. Like $7 million from 604 theaters in its first week. It eventually ends up grossing somewhere around anywhere from 50. The estimates are weird. 55 to $70 million
on an $8 million budget. Not too
on
bad.
An $8 million budget. Not a bad chunk of change. And needless to say, it is, it was a big hit, and it was nominated for Academy Awards. It was the 76 race. I was looking at it, Rich. 76 race that's a crazy race. for Best Picture.
I mean, Best Picture, you had Rocky, All the President's Men, Bound for Glory, Network, and Taxi Driver.
Yeah, it is an insane year. Just so we're clear. And the idea that you have two versions of news in the same year, Network, which is the flip of All the President's Men, right? It's the juxtaposition to All the President's Men. But $70 million on an $8 million budget is crazy. In the 70s, I mean, that's nuts.
Yeah, for All the President's Men, it's very much a I don't want to say it's an aspirational film, but it's as other people have said, it's almost like a documentary brought to life, a dramatized documentary. And it's fair, I think, but it also idolizes these guys for the perseverance they showed. It shows that they, had some flaws in their investigation, things like that. And Network is incredibly cynical and horrible. It's also a product of the time period of the post-war malaise, the national cynicism of.
Let's talk about cynicism, Rich. I bring out my dad. Network picked to KO Rocky. So my dad was a big believer in the cynicism.
But Rocky was the underdog story, and
Rocky was the feel-good movie. Rocky was the feel-good movie of the year, right? It was anybody can do anything. But I think it's a real interesting juxtaposition.
And I was just looking at the date now. March 28th, 1977 is when this Academy Awards ceremony was held. 8 weeks later, the ultimate let's feel good about ourselves, let's, kind of good triumphing over evil movie to just kind of like burst that malaise bubble of the mid-70s, Star Wars is released.
And it's a definitive time.
Sociologist kind of draws that line through because
think about it. It's the end of it's the definitive movie about Watergate, right? It's the definitive movie about, up until this point, the greatest scandal in the history of American politics. We've crossed that bridge and that divide by a country mile now. Critical response then and now. This movie is off the charts, Rich. We use Rotten Tomatoes as just an aggregate. Tomato meter, 94%. Popcorn meter, whatever the fuck their audience score, 92%. So there is no love lost for this. This movie is well loved. It is. It was a big hit. It's got big stars. It's got big aspirations. It does a lot of things. It does a lot of shit right. It gets a lot of stuff right. It makes the visceral way it makes journalism and the importance of journalism and the importance of being thorough and what journalists actually go to. Do you have a source? What was that?
And speaking truth to power.
Speaking truth to power, and also how important a free press is in American society. This is the ultimate movie to watch before tomorrow's election in that regard, right? Because we have a candidate who is talking about disassembling networks because he doesn't like how he gets treated.
There's never a moment of reflection of why are they, maybe I did something wrong. But that's always the case with people who complain. I mean, the actual investigation of Watergate by the Washington Post and the subsequent fallout, I think, has been a sticking point for the Republican Party. Going forward from in the early 80s when you start having Grover Cleveland hosting his conservative Wednesday breakfast meeting things where, he would be hashing out his whole, let's do away with income tax ideas.
Well, G. Gordon Liddy got his own goddamn show at one point. It's an insane thing.
But he was also at that time talking about the liberal media, and he started that idea. He started the idea that, oh, they must, if they're attacking us, not because we did something wrong, maybe, but
because they don't
because
like us.
They're partisan. And I think this movie goes out of its way to show, no,
that they're doing
not.
everything in their power. Right. I think one of the greatest things about the movie, the film strength, is them piecing it together, right? And it's that it's docudrama style, right? It's shot like it's a documentary, and it's shot like it's a crime movie, which it was, but it's shot like it's a crime movie, like where they're trying to figure out, well, this piece goes over here and this piece connects over here, but why is this over here? Why is that check got $25,000 on it? The critical response then was super interesting. Everybody genuinely loved it. Ebert had one of the great reviews. And this is what he said. And as somebody, again, him and Siskel were from rival newspapers. I don't know if a lot of people know that now, but when Siskel and Ebert came on television, it was because they both worked at different newspapers, and it was an interesting competing kind of point. It provides the most observant study of working journalists who've ever likely seen a feature film. I would say Ebert didn't make it to Spotlight, but that's okay. It succeeds brilliantly in suggesting the mixture of exhilaration, paranoia, self-doubt, and courage that permeated the Washington Post and its two young reporters went after the presidency. That pretty much sums it up. Now, we have a rare Siskel sighting as well. Siskel had he gave it 4 stars. He also thought it was the best movie of the year. And he was very adamant about that. And I was reading pieces of his review, and he's just like, I don't know how he gave it 4 stars in a Chicago Tribune review. Director Alan J. Pakula duplicates the surprise and suspense of his clue while avoiding the overstatement and pandering paranoia of his more recent thriller, The Parallax View. Pakula's greatest achievement is the way he unobtrusively weaves outside events into the narrative of the reporter's story. And he called it the best film of the year. So it's beloved. It has been beloved. It should be beloved. Like rewatching it today, it hums. It's a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, and it flies. It cooks.
Yeah, it. You know me, I'm a big fan of newspaper films. I love them. Going back to like His Gal Friday, Blessed Events with Lee Tracy, who, bless his heart, is buried about 15 miles that way from me. To films like from the mid 50s, like While the City Sleeps, which I feel kind of in a somewhat partly gives a blueprint to what's this movie is, even though it's based on real events.
You forgot one of my favorites, Rich. The sweet smell of success.
Sweet smell of that belongs in the more cynical category alongside Network.
Network.
I mean, It's a great film. It's a great film. And when I was in New York on Sunday evening walking around, I was thinking about Sweet Smell of Success.
That movie is rotten to its core, and I love every minute of it. It is rotten to its core. It is a rotten piece. It is just evil. It is an evil movie. But this movie isn't.
Yeah, this movie, like Spotlight ahead of it, they're both very much about process. The process of investigating, of verifying, of getting at that second verification to fully, cover your ass, cover your bases.
What did he say? Figuring it, it's incredible, right? Like when there's a whole sequence in the movie where they're trying to figure out the names, and then they talk, and it's over McDonald's, which I was looking at the McDonald's wrappers. It was pretty hilarious. Also, Dustin Hoffman's eating a cheeseburger in the most weirdest way. I don't know what the fuck's going on there. I'm just gonna tell you. It
might have been him trying to pull focus from Redford.
I don't know, but he's eating a cheeseburger and he's like ripping it apart, and it's just fucking weird. Anyway, but it's amazing. I was glued to it. I was like, why is he eating a cheeseburger like that? Anyway, there's a sequence where they're talking about the letters, right? We need what is JP? It's J, M, and L, or JP and L, and they're trying to figure out who's who. And then they come up with this thing. Well, we'll go in and talk to her, and you'll say this, and I'll say this, and then we'll get her to confirm without her actually confirming. And he's like, wasn't that a trick? And Redford's like, she's confirming. That's all we just need the confirmation. Yeah. And it's a quest movie, right? Like where they're piecing things together, and it all starts with Redford leaning forward at the fucking trial. Like there's the trial of the burglars, and there's a very upper crust lawyer, and he leans forward and he's like, why are you here? And it's just, and from that moment, the gleam in his eye is evident. Like he just like, it's like a dog chasing a car, and it moves. They're both really good. Like they're both great.
Later, you have one of the guys saying, "Yeah, I used to work for the CIA," and then he's like, "Wait, what?
What? It's like a fucking Scooby.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too because the Post had a really good,
an amazing
under Ben Bradlee, a great reputation for doing strong investigative journalism, and taking strong stances and speaking truth to power. They had already published the Pentagon Papers, which they mention early in the movie. And if you want to see a kind of a good dramatization of that, the Post from a few years ago with Tom Hanks. It is a drama.
And Meryl Streep. You forgot Meryl Streep.
Sorry.
That's a great movie. It's a fantastic movie.
And I think it's funny too because I linked those two movies together plus Spotlight into their own little newspaper cinematic universe franchise, because the new incoming editor of the Boston Globe in Spotlight is Ben Bradlee Jr. The actual Ben, the character is the actual Ben Bradlee's son, who is an actual person who was there at the Boston Globe, as played by Liev Schreiber.
I think the other thing that has to be talked about, it moves at a bullet clip. It moves very fast. Pakula, the way he shoots things, there is an air of paranoia to it that is not overt, but it's there. There's a sequence after he meets Deep Throat one of the times where there's where he's walking and you hear the clip clop of the on the street, and he stops and he turns around and he's like, I hope nobody's actually following me. And then there's a couple of times where Dustin Hoffman's meeting with people he knows, his connections, and some guy's taking a picture across the street, or it's there.
Or a car pulls up, he's hailing a cab, and he's like, "Uh-oh, is this car going to follow me?"
Yeah, and he's checking behind him. So it's got attention to it that's really nice and well done. And Pakula is a really good craftsman, director, and Redford and Hoffman, they play well together. Like they mesh, right? Because it's like, it's like Midnight Cowboy and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird pairing of these two superstars from the 70s, and they're both in rare form, and they're both they're playing real life people. So there's, that intrinsic, we have to make it as real as possible, right?
Yeah. And I do kind of want to also point out one thing I always thought was amusing once we knew everything. Ultimately, in I think it was 2000, and let me double check that, 2005. Yeah. The person who was Deep Throat, who was their anonymous contact, their contact within the government that they were keeping anonymous to protect their identity and their security, came forward and revealed himself. And it was a man by the name of Mark Felt, who was worked for the FBI. He was a deputy director, second assistant director of the FBI at that time. And he was 91 when he kind of revealed his identity to Vanity Fair magazine, that he was indeed, Deep Throat. And if you look at a picture of him from around that time, he looks just like a slightly younger version of Hal Holbrook, I think. So I think so.
It's really close. Sure, there's you said the right word. There's a verisimilitude to the movie that is, like it's dramatic, but it like you also get the idea like it doesn't paint them as superheroes. It
No.
They make mistakes, they do stuff like they get on each other's nerves. Like there's a sequence where it's one of my favorite sequences in the movie where Redford's writing something at the beginning of the whole thing before they've been paired together and they've kind of both been working on it, but they're not working together yet. And Hoffman takes his typewriter and starts correcting his story. And he's like, I'm not saying don't correct my work. It's the way you did it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, so there's a little bit of tension, but it's like, it's two of these great American actors. And I don't know, Redford in a lot of these movies looks so, like, just so, he's dashing. Like, there's a dashing quality to Robert Redford that you just can't, like, he can't be replicated. Like we can't build him in a computer or anything. You know what I mean? Legacy and franchise viability. Obviously, like Watergate's been told numerous times since then. We've had various, Watergate stories have different things. So Watergate is always a fertile ground to which to try to. Recently, we had the White House plumbers, which was on HBO, which kind of delved into G. Gordon Liddy and Haldeman and all of those people doing weird shit in a comedic way. So it's like this movie kind of opens the gates. Once we have the super serious version of the events, all of the other things that can come out of it, the satire, the irony, the idea
Dick
that
with Michelle Williams and Dan Hedaya.
The Dick movie Dick. Also, I think when you make a newspaper movie this good, it sets the parameters for making other good newspaper movies. So you have a movie like The Post, or you have a movie like most recently, and probably, the greatest example of that is Spotlight, which we've talked about on our show. It is simply put one of the best newspaper movies ever made, right? Along with this, and it's all the good things that we want out of a free and fair and fertile press, right? And so when you make a great newspaper movie, these movies tend to all have a lot of things in common about how hard it is, how deep the level of introspection on how to make things true and how to tell the true story without you know what I mean, without abandoning the principles of the journalists, right?
Yeah.
And it's always an interesting kind of like way to look at it. I also want to talk about one legacy thing that I think is the most interesting thing that's come up in a movie we've done on the show. In 2015, the Hollywood Reporter polled hundreds of Academy members, asking them to revote on past controversial decisions. This movie, Academy members indicated that, given a second chance, this movie should have beat Rocky. It is a rare thing when Hollywood admits its possible mistake. Now, I'm not going to say Rocky's not better, right? Rocky is pretty great. This movie is like, it is a fundamental important film, and it is also a fundamental important thing that we are dealing with on a daily basis on the news media and information and how information travels and how information is given to a populace. We're dealing with all of those things. And this movie, when the Washington Post had guts and wasn't afraid of, I don't know, picking a presidential candidate that they would give their endorsement to, but instead hedging their bets. And what if the maniac gets in? Well, then we don't want to upset him, even though he has also pretty much stated he will dismantle anything that's ever said anything bad about him. So I just think this movie is so important, and the reason we picked it was because a free and fair press is one of the defining principles of
Yes.
our democracy.
Yes, very much so. The Fourth Estate is there as a check and balance to what goes on in government. They're the ones who stand on the sideline, and that's why we have the First Amendment. I always think that's one of the most important things about our Constitution and about how great our country is that journalists are there to do that kind of work, whether on a local level with your county municipal governments, your town governments, state level, or national. And unfortunately, we've seen over the last, 15 years or so, the kind of like a systematic dismantling of those kind of newspapers. We've seen this not so much because of online things like that, but we've seen a systematic kind of like dismantling of newspapers when they, consolidation of media companies will come in and buy up some newspapers. And then, the first thing they do is like, let's bring in the efficiency experts and fire half the staff, strip everything down.
Corporatization.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Then
newspapers and
sell it off to, a hedge fund who does a second round of that. And there's a point in this movie here where we realize that these guys went out for 2 weeks and knocked on doors trying to get people to talk to them. 2 weeks. They didn't turn in a lick of copy, not one sentence that was published. They were just out working that story for 2 weeks. And I honestly don't think that
journalists get that time anymore. They don't
have that time to develop those kind of stories, do that kind of research. And I find that worrisome at times, to be honest. So it's nice to have this movie to remind us of the importance of that.
And maybe its greatest is that the great newspaper movies are there to show us these dark times we have, but they're also there to say how important a free and fair press is.
True. And hey, when I was freelancing for a local newspaper, I was doing entertainment features. I was not doing anything world shattering or anything like that by, going out and interviewing some band or doing a concert report when King Crimson was playing locally or whatever. But I hung out in the newsroom a lot when I had free time because it was a great way to pick up at a couple of extra assignments a month. And, that's a little bit more money. And I've been in a newspaper newsroom on the night of an election. And there's something crazy and electric about that. When there's been like big breaking stories, I've been there. So it's
kind of bittersweet. It's bittersweet because we're on the precipice. We picked this movie for a specific reason. I would also say at this point, vote properly. Please, America. Please, America.
Yes. We hint about our politics every now and then. We don't make a big show of it too much on this show, I don't think.
No, we don't. I don't think we do at all.
If you disagree with it, you probably think one time is too many, and I could understand that sort of. But so I think you guys know
vote accordingly.
Vote, vote your beliefs, but we hope that you share our beliefs for the most part. And to be honest, the candidate does not share. My candidate is not perfect. There are things that I disagree with them about, but I think that they are more movable once in office, that you could persuade them perhaps through the regular politics
process. One is actually going to listen, and the other one doesn't give a shit about anything. So,
yes.
Also, I voted. I put my Superman shirt on. I voted two things. I'm super happy. I voted for truth, justice, and the American way. Right? That's my Superman talk. I wore my Superman shirt to vote. Only one candidate can do truth, justice, and the American way. Also, one candidate is supported by both Han Solo and Indiana Jones. So it's easy. It's easy.
And Luke Skywalker.
And Luke Skywalker, and probably would have been Carrie Fisher if she was still
Yeah,
alive.
oh yes.
Anyway,
yes, so
definitely. So vote accordingly. Where can people find your stuff, Rich?
All of my writing can be found at FILMBUFFonline.com. We also have a Facebook page where we always post notices when we have new stories going up. We also use that to, for some quick breaking news like the passing of Quincy Jones and Jonathan Hayes today. You could have seen that news there first if you were following us on Facebook. I also am on the socials of Blue Sky and Twitter at FilmBuffRich, and that's where you can find me.
So I'm JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. I'm missing something. I'm not on TikTok, so don't worry about that. I do want to tell everybody, please join us on Thursday night for World Class Clown with Robert Bass. We welcome to the network. He's a very funny guy. We had him on Loud and Nerdy. So join us Thursday for that, live at 10 p.m. Super excited to have him here. And, last thing I'm going to say is next week, we have the rest of the movies for the rest of the year. We're going to go through them really quick for you so you know what's coming up. Sugarland Express. Yeah, here we go. Do our own promo. We also have Loud and Nerdy on Tuesday nights as well. So but not this Tuesday night because it's too important to Tuesday night and everybody's going to be thinking about other shit. There's no reason to talk about, what comic book movie made my day this week. It was Agatha. Agatha was pretty great. Agatha it wasn't WandaVision good, but it was pretty good. We're going to follow that up with Sideways as our Thanksgiving. So everybody should get, a bottle of wine, chill with us talking about one of the greatest Paul Giamatti roles of all time. Then on December 2nd, we're going to do Starman, which is one of John Carpenter's best, most underrated films. It's a love story. It's a science fiction movie. It's all of these things, and it's some of his best work. We are then, and I'm hoping we're going to be joined by guest Natasha Bogutsky. We're doing the Santa Claus on December 9th. And then to finish up the year, before we take a nice winter break, we will be doing Gremlins. 40th anniversary of Gremlins, Rich.
Wow.
Rules, Mogwai. I'm very excited. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes.
Long live democracy. Long live free press. Have a great evening. We'll see everybody on the other side. We'll see everybody next week for Sugarland Express. Bye.
Yes.